How does one awaken Kundalini? Kundalini can awaken consciously or unconsciously. When it's awakened unconsciously, that is to say that you are not physically aware that your Kundalini has awakened, or that you never knew what a Kundalini awakening was before now, and perhaps even now when you've experienced or are experiencing a Kundalini awakening, you don't know what it is, and the possibility is that you're probably going to any doctor, every other person that you can, to seek therapy, to seek counseling, to explain this phenomena that you're experiencing that somehow cannot be explained. The other way is when you are consciously trying to awaken your Kundalini, or that you've taken steps to awaken your Kundalini. And when you take steps to awaken your Kundalini, they can happen in some of the following ways. One of the most common ways is when you are initiated what we call Shaktipat. Shaktipat is when another who has an awakened Kundalini and is able to pass on this initiation to somebody else, they are doing this. Now, the reason why this works and what it actually means is Kundalini is life force, it's all that is. Now, if somebody has awoken to all that is within them, and that Kundalini has uncoiled in them, and it's rising, done their microcosmic orbit, is imagine that there is a force down below, or your life force where it sits, where it's accumulated. And if by a finger or by touch or by looking, right, there is an intention, and that finger, say for example, it's placed on your forehead. When it's placed on the forehead, by mere touch, just by that, or you might have seen others trying to press into here, and they'll hold this, and you'll see that the one that's receiving this starts to shake, and there's all sorts of movement that is happening. So what's happening is that when this is happening, the current, the pool of life force, that creative potential that's inside, starts to uncoil and starts to be attracted towards that other finger. So they both create two poles. Okay, they're not polarized, but like attracts like. So life force is attracting life force. So this is attracted, and in turn it creates a stirring. Now, initiation is one of the paths, and you could also go through a path of initiation if you were to attend to the samadhi of your guru, or if you were to attend to certain energy places, certain energy vortexes, certain places that are giving you a pull, but you've got to be receptive already. So there will be something that you may have unconsciously done or not done or experienced, but you're ripe for this, and this is what happens. Apart from initiation, there are then those of us who are on the Bhakti Marg. Bhakti Marg means the path of bhakti, the path of devotion. So you are devoted. It could be to a deity, it could be to an aspect of yourself, it could be to a god, it could be to anything that is taking you towards an expansion of your current state of consciousness into pure consciousness. So your devotion, so the classic example of devotion is Shri Hanuman to Ram, Radha to Krishna, or Krishna to Radha, right? So that level of devotion, Mirabai to Krishna, she was ready to be poisoned. Or Prahlad to Vishnu, Prahlad to Narayan. So we've got so many such instances where you're in your devotion, you are so devoted that you attribute no fruits of any action that are taken in your life, including the actions, to yourself, but to that which you're devoted to. So everything assumes the form of your devotion, so that that which you're devoted towards and you, the devotee, become one. So in that merging and that intense devotion, in that too, the natural course of action will be for Kundalini to awaken. And in that awakening, as you deepen your devotion and you just go with that finally you enter into that state and you just keep going. The other way of awakening Kundalini is to something called Jnana Yoga, which is through wisdom, but it will not be possible without you removing the veil of illusion. And that won't be possible without there being a level of devotion, because Bhakti and Jnana go hand in hand. So as the Bhakti rises, Jnana just comes. And this comes as you enter transcendental states, as you now start to enter the plane of wisdom. The other path is of Hatha Yoga. Now, Hatha Yoga is when you perform certain postures. There are certain yogasanas, and apart from the yogasanas, you've got 8 limbs of yoga. Now, in all those 8 limbs of yoga, there are different stages and different levels through which you pass. Now, they say Hatha Yoga can take up to 12 years for somebody's Kundalini to awaken. And for some, no matter what, may never have their Kundalini awakened, no matter whether you've been doing it for 12 or 14 or for 20 years. It is not as simple as we think it is for you to experience an awakened Kundalini, because there has got to be enough pressure that has been built up in the system for there to be an uncoiling of that energy. Because it's not just about you activating your pineal gland, it's not just about you opening your third eye or entering into crown consciousness, but there has to be, the two ends have got to basically meet. So as long as you're incarnate, you're here, you're in this physical form, the two have to be balanced. Otherwise, you might be living up here without any feet on your ground, and once you do get your feet on the ground, it will be quite impossible. The other way is through breath work, through pranayama. Various techniques of pranayama, kumbhaka, rechaka, so a way of you inhaling, exhaling and retaining your breath. Particularly retaining your breath. But there's a way of retention of breath and applying the 3 bandhas or the 3 locks. There will be the lock at the Muladhara, the lock at the Nabi and the lock at the neck. All these are applied together with various breath techniques. Now the breathing techniques, there are so many, but so pranayama is one way of activating your Kundalini. Apart from pranayama, there is then the use of mantra. There are specific mantras that have been used that you chant for a number of times, but the reason why you're chanting for a number of times is for you to awaken the mantra itself inside of you, because mere chanting does nothing. So you might have noticed that though you have practiced chanting a mantra just the way that your guru has taught you, or maybe you've watched it somewhere, you might find that it is a mere recitation, and maybe you even know it by heart, but nothing is happening. There are ways of chanting mantras. You chant it correctly, but it has to vibrate inside. So when you speak, your speech is coming from you dropping the sound into your belly, and then you are speaking right from here. And when you do that, if you place your hand on your belly, you can feel the vibration of that sound. Now, the vibration of that sound is eventually what causes a sort of a humming. It causes a bit of a buzzing like a bee. And that in itself, that sound helps the Kundalini to stir. Which comes to, we've covered mantra, so we've covered sound. And then we have, like I said, we have certain techniques. One technique is of you gazing in between your eyebrows. Another technique is the Tratakam, when you are focused on one thing and one thing alone and you keep looking at it. The Tratakam, or turning your gaze inward or upward, applying the locks, all of these things happen in a combination. So everything has got to be combined to produce a certain result within a prescribed amount of time. But folks, it's not as simple as that, because so many of you will have gone to a guru, have become initiated, and perhaps even gone through all of these parts, and either your Kundalini is just stirring, or it's stuck, or you are experiencing an imbalance so that it's producing all sorts of imbalances in your nervous system and pretty much frying you. And this is where so many of you are exhausted, you're suffering from fatigue, brain fog, you don't know whether you're coming or going, you feel ungrounded, some of you. And now there is another some of us where through these techniques and through all of these things that you've been doing, you have almost created a mental exercise so that you've created a new mental paradigm as opposed to a paradigm shift of consciousness. So consciousness is not shifting, but all this is happening through the mind. It's only happening in the mind. All these techniques are just happening in the mind. You see, it's that easy for it to be through the mind. And usually when it's through the mind is we're mentalizing everything. Oh, I felt this is how I'm feeling. Whereas when you're not, there's a lot of silence. There's a lot of silence that comes with that. And you can feel the subtleties in an awakening, in a stirring. You can feel the subtleties even before the awakening. You can feel the subtleties when all the chakras are moving and all the energy is now moving inside of you and you're getting into different states. So this, folks, is in a nutshell how to awaken Kundalini. But the spontaneous awakening of Kundalini is quite another ball game altogether. Now, how much it is spontaneous as well is another thing, because it's spontaneous only as far as your present lifetime is concerned, only as far as your physical reality is concerned. So you may be picking up from where you left in another lifetime, in another parallel life, which is possibly the reason why you feel drawn towards this path again. So you will have noticed, if you do have a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, you will be drawn towards finding out about Kundalini, or somebody might mention something. There might be some incidents with snakes, fire. You might have visitations. There are so many different things that can possibly happen when you have a spontaneous Kundalini and you didn't know about this. Now, when you do have a spontaneous Kundalini, this, folks, apart from you going to certain places and you also being traumatized, so you can be so traumatized or have stored so much trauma inside of you that system, the Kundalini, uncoils. So what we say is Kundalini is like the biggest reset. It's the biggest point of relaxation. It is how the chemical anandamide is created, which is already there. So all of the chemicals that we crave outside, we crave because there is something that needs to happen for that to be recreated, or rather created in the factory of us. Which is why most of you who will go through a Kundalini awakening, you might realize that you are going through states of feeling so much bliss, like this is it, and you're so relaxed and you feel one with everything, right? That is not a state of samadhi. But when you're still going through that, it's a sort of like an intoxication, but it's not it is a sort of intoxication, but it's literally nitric oxide. So our body is producing all sorts of chemicals, all sorts of things when we're going through this process. So folks, please do drop me any comments and share this information with anyone you think will benefit. But one little note to all of you is that we have more than 100 posts on Kundalini. And there are so many more because this is a topic that is so vast, it's infinite, it's almost impossible to describe in one video or even 100 posts. It's very, very deep. Any questions, please drop them in your comments, but do go through the other posts. Lots of love.